Alright, today I'm going to be doing a review for Test 9 for Algebra 1. So let me jump right in. The first problem I want to do is one of these area problems where a square garden is going to be expanded. Each side will be expanded by 5 meters. The total area of the new garden will be 196 square meters. Find the length of each side of the original garden. Alright, so I put a diagram with this. You can see it over here. I'm going to zoom in for a second. So I have to find the length of each side here, which means, if this is x units from here to here, and this is 5, then that whole side will be x plus 5, okay? The other side is going to be the same for the same reason. So to find the area of a rectangle or a square, you multiply the length and the width. And when I multiply those, x plus 5 times x plus 5, I will get the area. Now, the problem also says that the new area is going to be 196, and it says it right there. So I'm going to make it equal to 196, and now I'm going to solve this, okay? Now, to solve this, I'm going to use FOIL or box, whichever technique you like. And when I do this, I got x times x is x squared. And when, I'll do it out with box here, 5x, 5x, 5 times 5 is 25. And then you can add the 5x's together. You get x squared plus 10x plus 25, okay? That's what you get when you multiply that out. So let me finish this over here. Plus 10x plus 25 equals 196. Okay, now anytime I'm solving a quadratic equation, I have to have equals 0. I have to have everything on one side. So I'm going to bring that 196 over to the left by subtracting it from both sides. Those cancel, and 25 minus 196 is negative 171. So I got x squared plus 10x minus 171. Okay, so now you could do this by factoring if you wanted. You could do it by quadratic formula. I think I'm going to go straight to quadratic formula. 171 doesn't seem like such a great number to factor, but I'll do it out by factoring also. Okay, so if I was going to factor this, it looks like it would be nice and easy, except that 171 is a pretty big number. But with a little bit of punching numbers into a calculator, I figured out that 9 and 19 add up to 171, and if I subtract them, I can get 10 if I make the 9 negative, which means I can go x minus 9 and x plus 19 equals 0, and this is going to be nice easy to solve from here. I go x minus 9 equals 0, x plus 19 equals 0, and I get my two answers of 9 and negative 19. Okay. Now, this is a real world kind of problem, which means, if I have this was a garden to begin with, right? It's easy to have a garden that's 9 meters on one side, but it's impossible to have a garden that's negative 19 meters, which means you actually throw out the negative answer here. Okay, and I'm just going to say that x is 9, all right? And that's the answer. Now you could have done this with the quadratic formula if you wanted also, where a would be 1, b would be 10, and c would be negative 171. Plug that in and solve it out, and you'll get the same two answers, I promise, if you do it correctly. I'm not going to do it out just for the interest of time, but you certainly have that option, okay? All right, next, number 2. What's the vertex and axis of symmetry of the equation y equals x squared minus 4x plus 4? Okay, so there's a vertex formula. You should hopefully have it on your formula sheets by now. X equals negative b over 2a. We've been doing this for weeks now. A is 1, B is negative 4, C would be 4, which you don't actually use for this, but that's okay. So x equals negative b will be negative negative 4 over 2 times a is 1, which gives me positive 4 over 2, so x is 2. Now remember, this is the vertex they want, which means that's the x-coordinate, and I also need the y, okay? This, however, is the axis of symmetry. So it's nice when you get that because you already got one of the answers and it's half of the other answer also. All right, so for me to find the y-coordinate of the axis of the vertex, rather, if I take the equation, the y equals x squared minus 4x plus 4, and plug in the 2 where there's an x, I will find out my y-coordinate. So this is 4 minus 8 plus 4, so y equals 0. So that's my y-coordinate of the vertex, and those are my two answers. Okay. Number 3, solve by square roots. So when it says solve by square roots, there's usually a nice reason because it usually works out really nice. Also, this one just has an x squared and some regular numbers. So if I can get the x squared alone, you'll see how nicely this works out. So if I add 196 to both sides, I'll get the 3x squared alone, which gives me 192. Next, I'd like to divide by 3. And I get x squared equals 192 divided by 3 is 64. And my last step is I can take the square root of both sides. Remember, you got two answers here. Okay, it's a positive one and a negative one. And I get x equals square root of 64 is 8. And x also equals negative 8. Two answers. Okay? You could see this written as that also. That also means the same thing. Okay? Plus or minus 8 is the same as 8 or negative 8. Anyway. All right. That was that answer. Number 3. Find the x-intercepts. So remember, when they say find the x-intercepts, that's the same as solve. It's also the same as find the zeros. Anytime you see those things, they're all the same. They're asking you the same thing, okay? They just want you to solve it, either by, it doesn't say which way to do it, by factoring or by quadratic formula. You certainly could do either. If I'm looking at this, I see there's nothing except for the implied 1 in front of the x squared. So I'm usually going straight to factoring if I can. Now, not everything in the world is factorable, but usually when they tell you specifically do the quadratic formula, sometimes that might be a tip that, maybe it's not factorable. Now, negative 45 is really not a big number to work with. There's only a handful of things that multiply to 45, 9 and 5, 15 and 3, gosh, that might be, and 45 and 1, that might be it. I'm not sure I'm missing any. Anyway, if I take this pair right here and I subtract them, I get 12. So if I make that 3 negative, I get positive 12, which is what I'm looking for since that's the middle number. So I can go straight to my parentheses now because there was nothing in front of the x squared. In the parentheses, I'm going to go x plus 15 and x minus 3. And now solve it. I'm not done. Don't write 15 and negative 3 are your answers because that's not right. It's actually the opposite signs. Go x plus 15 equals 0. X minus 3 equals 0. And then solve. So I get x equals 3. And x equals negative 15. Okay, and those are my two answers. Okay, this one, solved by quadratic formula. So, I always write down what A, B, and C are. The reason is because if I go into that equation enough times and pull out that negative 2 for C, I will eventually pull out a positive 2. I've done this enough times that that's the reason I write down what A, B, and C are on the side of the paper. And then I plug them into the formula. The formula is negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And when I plug those numbers in, I'll get negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times a is 5, c is negative 2, all over 2 times a is 5. All right, now let me start simplifying what's under the radical. That's called the discriminant. You don't need to know that, but it's good to know what I'm talking about. Okay, so here, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to determine whether I have a positive or a negative number. I have two negatives there, or a subtraction and negative, so that's going to be a plus. And then I can multiply those three things together. 4 times 5 is 20, and 20 times 2 is 80. Let's try that again. 4 times 5 is 20, and 20 times 2 is 40. Just seeing if you're paying attention. And 2 times 5 is 10, okay? All right, next, when I got x equals negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 188 over 10. Now I'm going to need a calculator to do the square root of 188 because that is not a perfect square. 188 square root is 13.71 over 10. All right, now I'm going to break up the plus minus. Here's the plus, here's the minus. I got negative 12 plus 13.71 divided by 10. And I got over here negative 12 minus 13.71 divided by 10. And when I punch this into my calculator, this one's 1.71 divided by 10, which is 0.171. The other one, when I take negative 12 minus 13.71, I get 25.71 divided by 10, which is 2.571. And there's my answers. X equals 171 and 2.571. Okay, and that was it. All right, so that was my review for your chapter test. Remember that there's a lot of problems that you can solve either by factoring or by quadratic formula. You can usually do them by whichever way you want, unless the question specifically says it, which, usually I'm not pushing too hard for that. Make sure you're good at one of them. It's good to be able to do both, but, make sure you can do one of them and be comfortable with it anyway, okay? All right, that's it, and I'm going to close it out with a little more music. Take care.